House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Trinity Moore from Aurora, Colorado.
Will you say the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Polo, please take the roll. Representative Becker. Representative Becker. Buckner. Conti. Corum. Court. Bill Grosso. Dorr.
Excused.
Or excused. Duran. Everett. Exum. Fields. Fisher. Foote. Representative Foote. Absent. Garcia. Gardner. Representative Gardner. Gardner? Absent. Giroux. Janal. Hamner. Holbert. Representative Gardner is present. Representative Holbert. Holbert. Holbert absent. Hollinghorse. Humphrey. Joshi. Kagan. Representative Kagan. Kagan. Present. Representative Kraftharp. Labuda. Representative Labuda. Labuda. Absent. Landgraf. Lawrence. Lebsock. Lee. I gotcha. May. McCann. McLaughlin. McNulty. Representative Foote is present. Melton. Mitch Bush. Moreno. Murray. Navarro. Nordberg. Pabon. Representative Pabon. Pabon. I'll mark him present if you want me to.
No, absent.
Absent. Peniston. Pedersen. Primavera. Priola. Rankin. Rosenthal. Ryden. Sane. Salazar. Schaefer. Scott. Singer. Sonnenberg. Stevens. Swam. Zabo. Tyler. Vigil. Waller. Williams. Wilson. Wright. Young. Speaker Ferrandino. Labuda, Ubon, Holbert. What are we at? 61, 1, 3. Who's the absent? We've got Holbert, Labuda, Ubon absent. I saw Ubon, but I don't see them now. Door. 61, 1, and 3.
With 61 members present, 1 excused, and 3 absent, a quorum is present. Representative Buckner.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the reading of the Journal of April the 21st be dispensed with and that it be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For members of Public Health Care and Human Services, we have a change in our schedule this afternoon. As I announced yesterday, Senate Bill 13 will be moved to next week, and we will be hearing Senate Bill 130 first.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, how many of you in here are old enough to remember the song Tom Dooley? There we go. Well, about this time tomorrow, reckon where you ought to be. Sportsman's Caucus, first floor, is going to have booths set up. It's Sportsman's Day at the Capitol. There will be booths on first floor all day and starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you get here early, you'll be able to go and see those. And, oh yeah, that minor thing about lunch, the world famous hot dogs will be out on the east steps of the Capitol tomorrow at noon. So the hot dogs will be there. This is co-sponsored by the Rural Caucus and the Sportsman's Caucus. There'll be interactive booths and so forth. Be a world of fun. Don't miss it. Thank you.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to welcome and celebrate 3 of my wonderful constituents from Route County Steamboat Springs, the Sherpa family, the mom Dawa, and the 2 daughters, Shering and Tenzing Sherpa from Route County, Colorado. Woohoo!
Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. It's time for another senior moment. If you look on your desk, you have this flyer with all the healthy carrots. I just want to remind you that nutrition is really, really important for our aging population, and thanks to you and thanks to the good citizens of Colorado, we have some really excellent nutrition and meal programs for our seniors. I was at a conference last spring where they talked about how quickly someone can deteriorate if they are not getting the proper nutrition. So members, keep this in mind. Whoever has a constituent in Joe's, Colorado, that person is profiled in this flyer. And also for those of you who have constituents in the Greeley area, your constituent is profiled in this flyer today. Thank you.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a change of order in our bills for this morning for health insurance and environment. We will hear Representative May's bill, Senate Bill 99, last instead of second.
Further announcements or introductions? Representative Murray.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a moment of personal privilege, please.
Members, can we have your attention? Representative Murray will be granted a moment of personal privilege. Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me pull this up. My hands are shaking. This is not easy. I think we see the best and the worst of human behavior in this building. We are very heartfelt when we eulogize victims of the Holocaust, and we reflect on that through the day. And then we turn around and then we take petty joy in some of our little political skirmishes with one another, all in a day's work. Especially among the lobbying corps, we see a wide range of persuasive methods. development of personal friendships. We enjoy that. Sometimes it's false friendliness. Sometimes they lecture us about principle. Sometimes it's gentle begging or constant cajoling. And sometimes it even turns into subtle intimidation. What I really enjoy most is when they sort of organize themselves out there in the lobby and they decide who's going to lobby whom and who the targets are. And they and we sort of think that we don't know what one another is doing, and that makes it kind of fun. But the lobbyists have their little lists of who they need to talk to. But in my mind, there was an ethical line crossed in the lobby, and I wanted to point that out. A few weeks ago, when Representative Hamner and I were working on the Student Success Act, Senate Bill, or House Bill 1292, we all know what the lobbying was like at that time and how heartfelt were all of the feelings from all the school districts about what was happening with their funding. And so I think all of us got a lesson on our folks starting to pay attention, and we talked about how we were glad that they were paying attention. But the lobbying got pretty fast and furious, and we called meetings of all of the lobbying, or all of the various groups that we serve. You know, we have the K-12 community, we have the charter people, we have the CFOs, we have the superintendents. And we held a meeting for the K-12 lobbyists. And Jason Hopfer encouraged lobbyists not to attend that meeting. This was a meeting where legislators were going to get information from lobbyists who are representing our K-12 schools about how we can improve the bill. This was an educational effort for all of us. We felt attacked in some ways by all the information we were receiving, but in another way, I got some new insights into school districts that I just hadn't had before, and I appreciated that. So for a lobbyist to try to talk the other K-12 lobbyists into not attending a legislator's meeting to get input on how to change the bill, I think that crossed the line. And I regret, you know, that he works for my own school district. So that hurt me even more. And as far as I know, there was only one lobbyist. This was the good news. There was only one other lobbyist that did not attend that meeting at his behest. Several other lobbyists, you know, I kind of figured out what was going on, and they said, boy, yeah, you need to know this was going on. And you know what their response was? Is, we're just lobbyists. You think we're not going to come to a meeting when a legislator calls a meeting to talk about a bill? That was their words, we're just lobbyists. And what that said to me is they have respect for the system. It wasn't about me or Representative Hamner as legislators. And Representative Hamner, nobody knew I was going to do this today, so this is strictly me. I think those lobbyists show that they, through respecting us, they respect the system and the institution. And when we start to lose that in this building, you know, what are we here for? I think the public would be outraged to think that a paid lobbyist was attempting to thwart an honest effort of legislators, especially when those lobbyists are representing school districts. We pass bills in this chambers about bullying, and yet that's what's going on in the lobby in this context. And this is for a school district. So the very people that are representing our children are guilty of bullying themselves. I've heard many former public servants who've spoken in this well, and they've talked about the level of civility changing. in the building, and I just feel that it was my duty to speak up when it gets to the level of such disrespect. I'm embarrassed that the other many wonderful school district lobbyists were put through this, and I hope Jason Hopfer apologizes to them. Thank you for your time.
Any further announcements or introductions? Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House Ag Committee, don't forget we have a joint Ag Committee meeting tomorrow. It's a briefing on hunter and angler recruitment programs and policies from the Division of Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And I hope you can be there. I know appropriations this meeting, so there may be some of us that are not going to be able to attend, but I hope you will all attend. Thank you.
Seeing no further announcements or introductions, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House proceed out of order for consideration of House Resolution 1005.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of House Resolution 1005. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Resolution 1005.
House Resolution 1005 by Representative Garcia concerning the 100th anniversary of the Ludlow Massacre in southern Colorado.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move House Resolution 1005 and ask it be read at length.
Whereas, in the early 1900s, mining was dangerous and difficult work, and Colorado coal miners were at constant risk of explosions, suffocation, and collapsing mine walls. And whereas many coal miners lived in company housing in company-owned towns in which all land, real estate, stores, and amenities were owned by the mine operator and were expressly designed to instill loyalty and quash any dissent among workers. And whereas, while company towns brought some improvements to workers' lives, including larger homes, better medical care, and broader access to education, ownership of the towns afforded the mine operators a great deal of control over all aspects of the workers' lives by imposing curfews, employing armed company guards who did not permit the miners to leave, and evicting anyone who expressed dissatisfaction with the company. And whereas in 1900, the United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, began organizing coal miners in the western states, including Colorado, and despite attempts by mine owners to suppress union activity, secret organizing continued in the years leading up to 1913, when the union demanded, on behalf of the miners, safer working conditions and fair wages. And whereas after the major coal companies, led by Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, CF&I, rejected the UMWA's demands in September 1913, the UMWA went on strike, and the mining companies promptly evicted the miners from their company homes. And whereas after being evicted, the miners and their families moved into tent villages prepared by the UMWA, where they lived throughout the harsh winter of 1913-14. And whereas confrontations frequently occurred between striking miners and working miners, sometimes resulting in deaths. And whereas CF&I hired the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency, a notorious aggressive strikebreaker, to protect new workers and harass the strikers. And whereas Baldwin Felts adopted the practice of randomly shooting into tents, patrolling the village's perimeter, and spraying bullets from an armored car mounted with a machine gun known as the Death Special. And whereas this tactic drove the strikers to dig pits beneath their tents to better protect their families. And whereas on April 20th, 1914, at 10 a.m., the local militia, who supported the mine operators, surrounded the tent colony and began firing bullets into the tents. And whereas the bombardment continued for hours, during which the militia also poured kerosene on the tents, setting them ablaze, and pillaged the area. And whereas by 7 p.m., the camp was destroyed. And whereas during the course of the melee, 4 women and 11 children huddled together in the pits beneath their tents to avoid being shot, the militia captured camp leader Louis Tikas and 2 other men, and many miners and their families escaped to an outcrop of hills when a passing freight train stopped to provide them cover from the militia's machine guns. And whereas later, 2 of the women and all 11 children who had huddled in their tents were found dead, having suffocated after their tent was set on fire. Louis Tikas and the other 2 captured men were found fatally shot, their bodies left along the railroad tracks in full view of passing trains, and 3 company guards and 1 militiaman were killed in the fighting. And whereas this criminal episode, now known as the Ludlow Massacre, triggered national shame and outrage and provided extra urgency to the movement for labor relations reform, which eventually resulted in passage of the National Labor Relations Act. And whereas the Ludlow Tent Colony site was designated a National Historic Landmark on January 16, 2009, and a granite monument has been erected at the site in memory of the miners and their families who died that day. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado that we, the members of the Colorado House of Representatives, commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Ludlow Massacre and convey our sympathies to the families of the men, women, and children who lost their lives on that fateful day. Recognize the tragic events of the Ludlow Massacre as a pivotal event in American history, and remember the people who died on that day, including Elvira Valdez, 3 months, Frank Petrucci, 6 months, Lucy Petrucci, 2 years, Lucy Costa, 4 years, Cloriva Pedregon, 4 years, Joe Petrucci, 4 years, Onofrio Costa, 6 years, Rogelio Pedregon, 6 years, Mary Valdez, 7 years, Eulala Valdez, 8 years, Rudolfo Valdez, 9 years, Frank Snyder, 11 years, Primo Larese, 18 years, Frank Rubino, 23 years, Fedelina Costa, 27 years, Louis Ticas, 30 years, Private Alfred Martin, 30 years, Charlie Costa, 31 years, Patricia Valdez, 37 years, James Filer, 43 years, and John Bartolotti, 45 years. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to Don DePrince and Fawn Amber Montoya, co-chairs of the Ludlow Centennial Commemoration Commission.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you may be seated. Members, thank you for taking time this morning to recognize nearly 100 years ago in Colorado, wrong plagued our people and threatened our freedom. In the early 1900s, the mining industry was booming, bringing better quality to workers' lives by larger homes, better medical care, broader access to education in Colorado. However, this all came to an end at a small price, a big price for our workers out there. Mining was not the ordinary job. It was a dangerous job. The work was very difficult. The working conditions of coal miners were awful. Death was no surprise, and injuries were almost expected. What should have been a thriving occurrence for all was the reality that an exploitation of hardworking men and women and their families. With such conditions, the coal miners did what any brave Americans would do. They fought back using the political process and exercising their First Amendment right. The coal miners formed the United Mine Workers of America, and together they advocated for fair treatment, safe working conditions, and equal pay for equal work. The UMWA came up with demands that they expected, but the major coal companies rejected those demands, which led to the UMWA going on strike in September of 1913. As a result of the strike, the mining companies immediately evicted the miners from their company homes that they were providing for them, forcing them to live out in the streets and throughout the harsh winter season. The miners, though, showed perseverance among being evicted. They formed tent colonies, sheltering them through the harsh winter. And on April 20th, 1914, the local militia raided the Ludlow Tent Colony. The miners were shot, and the colony was covered in kerosene and lit on fire. More than 60 people were massacred, and their community was demolished. And later, the truth was revealed, and the word got out about what actually happened. This event, which became known as the Ludlow Massacre, triggered national shame and outrage. The loss of the Ludlow community fueled the movement for labor relations reform, and a reform that led to the National Labor Relations Act. This tragic event of the Ludlow Massacre are recognized as a pivotal moment here in American history. And the bravery and courage demonstrated by the coal miners gave voice to millions of Americans in the years to follow, and still to this day. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for a moment of silence to remember all those who have died.
The House will observe a moment of silence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Garcia.
Members, the Ludlow miners inspired freedom and change and have forever shaped our history and our future. It is with great honor that I bring forward this resolution to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Ludlow Massacre and the men, women, and children who lost their lives.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in support of this resolution. Ludlow is in my district. It is about 15, 20 some miles north of the town of Trinidad. And the massacre site is a site I visited a couple different times. There's really not much there. There's one granite memorial to the families and children that were tragically killed there, and some placards that talk about the incident that led up to the massacre and the massacre itself. But to put it into perspective, which I think is important, is remembering not only who these people are, but who these children were. I mean, these were immigrant families. The day before the massacre was the Greek or the Orthodox Easter. And the families, in one of the pictures you saw there, they were playing baseball. They did their services in the morning in this tent town, and then played baseball and such in the afternoon, enjoying the holiday, the holy holiday of Easter. And the next day, the tragedy occurred. So the moment of joy of being with family and friends and being in this new country of theirs and celebrating the highest day of their religion in the Orthodox Christian calendar, and the day to follow was a day of utmost terror and tragedy, is a contrast which I was caught off guard by to an extent when I was at this memorial and meeting with some individuals there to talk about it. And it's another black mark in Colorado's history, just like we talked about last week with another part of my district with the internment camps of the Japanese. Once again, there's a black mark in Colorado's history that is in my 20,000 square miles that I call the 64th House District. But thankfully, because of what happened afterwards, because of the response that people had, good people who were, frankly, some of them in this very chamber, said, we are not going to tolerate that. And it doesn't matter if it's immigrants, it doesn't matter if it's union or non-union. It was people, human beings that were killed because one group didn't like the way at that particular moment their actions they were taking. And so we in this, well, the chamber 100 years ago, plus the chamber across the hall and the chambers over in the United States Capitol, put together programs to prevent this from ever happening again. So you do not see these type of towns in Colorado or any part of the nation. You do not see these type of atrocities. Now, we still have problems, but these problems are not what they faced, where they were treated below human dignity at the level that they became nothing but targets for the militia, which really was just our National Guard units, to come in and shoot at. Terrible. The loss of life, especially the young children, abhorred. But it happened. And it happened about 100 years ago, almost to this day. And so we must remember that. And the developments that came out of it, the federal and state regulations, OSHA for working environments, the National Labor Relations, all those things started because of what happened to those children, to the children's mothers, and to the few men that were killed on that day about 100 years ago. So as we remember this day, let's remember it for what it is and what it has brought us, and that we must continue to respect human life and the dignity of human life, regardless of the situation. And when we fail to do so, the worst part of humanity shows. And that is what creates the tragedy. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor of House Resolution 1005 say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Resolution 1005 is passed. Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that this morning's roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be made the roll call, the co-sponsors of House Resolution 1005. Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would ask members of the Ludlow Centennial Commemoration who are here in the gallery to please stand and help us welcome them for their work.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. We will proceed to our next order of business, third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill. Are you ready, Mr. Kohler?
Yes, sir.
Where's the goat? Should be in front of your desk by now, Mr. Kohler. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 92.
Senate Bill 92 by Senator Rivera, also Representative Williams, concerning the creation of the crime of insurance fraud in connection with making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 92 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of Senate Bill 92 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, Senate Bill 92 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1362.
House Bill 1362 by Representative Moreno, also Senator Ulibarri, concerning great-grandparent visitation with great-grandchildren.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1362 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1362 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative, close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1362 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 49.
Senate Bill 49 by Senator Heath, also Representative Priola, concerning endangering public utility transmission in connection with making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 49 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of Senate Bill 49 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 64 aye votes, 1 no vote, 0 excused, and 0 absent, Senate Bill 49 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. We'll proceed to our next order of business, consideration of resolutions. Mr. Kohler? Please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 26.
Senate Joint Resolution 26 by Senators Zenzinger and Kerr, also Representatives Peniston and Duran, concerning the designation of April 8, 2014 as Equal Pay Day in Colorado and in connection with acknowledging the persisting problem of wage disparity among various groups.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Senate Joint Resolution 26 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas, 50 years after the passage of the Federal Equal Pay Act of 1963, pay discrimination continues to be a real and persistent problem that shortchanges American women and people of color and their families. And whereas, as the majority of women are primary or co-breadwinners, pay inequity can make an enormous difference in a family's ability to make ends meet. And whereas, according to a 2014 report using American Community Survey data based on 2012 annual earnings, the average woman in Colorado earned 80 cents for every dollar earned by a man in a similar position. And whereas for Colorado women of color, the gap is even wider, as African American women earned only 67.5 cents and Latinas just 52.5 cents for every dollar earned by Caucasian men, the highest earners in the state in 2012. And whereas men of color also face pay disparity compared to the highest earners. And whereas fair pay strengthens the security of families today and eases future retirement costs while also enhancing the American economy. And whereas providing equal pay and offering workplace flexibility help employers recruit and retain the most qualified employees in their field and increase productivity and profits. And whereas to achieve pay equity, we need to combat discrimination, properly value women's care work, develop effective policies and programs to educate and train women and people of color for higher paying jobs, and give women and people of color the tools they need to get the pay they deserve. And whereas fair pay policies can be implemented easily and without undue costs in the private and public sectors. And whereas individuals, businesses, nonprofit and labor organizations, and governmental agencies each have a role in closing the wage gap. And whereas Tuesday, April 8, 2014, symbolizes the time in the current year in which the wages paid to American women catch up to the wages paid to men from the previous year. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, proclaim Tuesday, April 8, 2014 to be Equal Pay Day in the State of Colorado, and urge governmental agencies, businesses, nonprofit and labor organizations, and individuals to take steps to implement fair pay equity policies to help close the pay gap for Colorado's women and people of color. Be it further resolved that a copy of this joint resolution be sent to 9 to 5 Colorado, who will send a copy of this joint resolution to Equal Pay Day sponsors: American Civil Liberties Union of Colorado, Blackwell Communications, Citizens Project, Colorado Center on Law and Policy, Colorado Fiscal Institute, Colorado Jobs with Justice, Colorado Organization for Latina Opportunity and Reproductive Rights, Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, Journey Financial, Jewish Women's Fund, League of Women Voters of Colorado, NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado Foundation, One Colorado, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, Service Employees International Union Local 105, Women's Collaborative for Colorado, and Women's Foundation of Colorado.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and colleagues, please be seated. It is my pleasure, as one of my last official acts here in this body, to be speaking about women's issues. Pay discrimination is a real and persistent problem that continues to shortchange American women and their families. Women earn less than men in every state and region of this country. Women don't choose to earn less, but a significant pay gap exists, and for the first time in many years is actually widening for women and women of color at all levels of education and across all occupations. Nationwide, women earn 78 cents for every dollar earned by men in 2012 annual earnings. In Colorado, women are doing slightly better. We can be proud of that bit, at 80 cents for every dollar earned by men. But for women of color in Colorado, the gap is wider. African American women earned only 67.5 cents and Latinas just 52.5 cents for every dollar earned by white men, who were the top earners in 2012. So that's not something to be particularly proud of. Progress in closing the wage gap has slowed noticeably since the 1980s and early 1990s. Since 2001, the gender pay gap has narrowed by only about 1 percentage point. At this rate, it will take another 45 years for women to earn as much as men. I ask for your support for Senate Joint Resolution 26.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pay equity is good for the economy and for working families. It reduces poverty, stimulates the economy, and increases women's economic security. It reduces stress-related health problems and healthcare costs. There is a business case for pay equity. Providing pay equity and offering workplace flexibility helps employers recruit and retain the most qualified employees in their field, and is proven to increase productivity and profits. Fortune magazine's 100 Best Companies to Work For in America all have extensive workplace flexibility policies, which include things like access to affordable and quality childcare. I ask for your support.
Representative Zeba. Madam Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just would like to say thank you, Representative Peniston and Representative Duran, for bringing this forward. And, you know, we have made progress. Very slight, but we have. And it's unfortunate that in this country we are still at a place where equal work doesn't bring equal pay. I mean, here in this chamber, right, we all get paid the same. We don't always all do equal work, but we do get equal pay. But for the same job, it's important that we don't look at the color of someone's skin or the gender that they are and have disparity in pay, just as Representative Peniston mentioned. But how I look at it as a parent or a leader in my caucus, our leaders must be the example to the people that are following them. And if you look at the statistics, the White House, under President Obama, pays women 88 cents for every dollar that a man makes. One of our senators, Mark Udall, pays women on his Senate staff, he does a little bit worse, 85 cents of every dollar. You know, as I was coming into the Capitol this morning, I ran into Cory Gardner on the elevator. It was a nice surprise. And I'm proud of him that he pays equally in his office. Whether they're men, women, whatever their color is, it doesn't matter, because that's the right thing to do. And like I said, our leaders need to be the example that we follow. So therefore, I think we need to send a strong message to two of our leaders. I move L006 and ask it to be displayed. And this would just add to the list. Oh.
Representative Zabel, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just coming.
Are we?
Right now, it's probably displayed. Representative Zabel.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would just like to list two of our leaders, have the resolution sent to them to say, here in Colorado, we're watching you, and we expect more out of you. We expect, as our leaders, you to do what's right and to pay women of color, the same thing for the same job well done. Although we are making some progress, it isn't enough progress. It doesn't matter that my gender or my skin color should cause me to make a lower wage for doing the same exact job. Current law already says that's not legal. So all this amendment would do is send it to our leaders and let them know we have our eye on you. Do what's right. Ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Representative, just walking across. Representative Stevens. I thought he was coming to the mic. I didn't. Representative Stevens.
Yeah, I'm going to wait because you want.
We're to the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree that we should hold our elected leaders accountable. I think that we should have a substitute amendment, though. I think that we should challenge our Republican congresspersons to disclose how much they pay women and men. Because this isn't just about the president. This isn't about one senator. This is about them all setting an example. Thank goodness that the state of Colorado and the people of the state of Colorado have set our salaries here. That way we all make the same. And I think Representative Zabel is probably correct that maybe we don't all do the same amount of work, but nonetheless, the people have felt that it was important that we have the same salary. But it shouldn't be a political thing. Equal pay for equal work is not a political thing. And if we really want to make sure that we have some parity in this, then let's make sure that the Republican congressional folks here in the state of Colorado disclose to the public how much they're paying women, compare that to what they're paying men. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, you know, yesterday I was a little sick, but I'm glad to be back down here with all of you. And it's interesting to see this amendment come forward. And I think, you know, in a lot of ways, the amendment that you're bringing forward has some merit. However, I move substitute amendment L009 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is properly displayed. To the amendment, Representative.
Thank you, Mr.
Duran.
Speaker. And instead of, you know, just calling out a couple of folks with regards to this issue, I would encourage that this resolution be sent to all elected federal officials who represent the state of Colorado. And let me tell you why. Representative Szabo, I appreciate the you know, the information that you brought forward. However, it is Senator Udall's position that based on experience and skills for those that he employs, that there is equity in the office. So I'm not sure where exactly those numbers came from, but one way or another, I think when we think about the need for equity in the workplace and making sure that there's equal pay for equal work, there are a lot of other issues that mean so much to Colorado's women and women across this country. Issues like the Lilly Ledbetter Act that that President Obama signed into law under executive order.
To the amendment, Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is to the amendment. And the reason why it's to the amendment is that I think there's a lot of issues that still remain out there, whether it's in the form of legislation or is what is happening in a person's place of employment, to make sure that there is true equity in the workforce and there's equal pay for equal work. And that's why I think that we need to send this resolution to all federal elected officials. And one of the reasons, too, that we need to send it to all federal elected officials is because of pieces of legislation that are going through Congress in the past and have not been able to make it through. Pieces of legislation like the Paycheck Fairness Act, which was reintroduced in Congress in January of 2013. And the Paycheck Fairness Act would close loopholes in our existing equal pay laws, prohibit retaliation against workers who ask about or share wage information, and empower women to better negotiate salary and benefit increases. And so I agree that we should send this resolution to President Obama, we should send it to Senator Udall, but we should send it to all of our federal elected officials that represent the great state of Colorado, because there's much more work to be done in a variety of ways.
Further discussion, Madam Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, Representative Duran, that is a good idea, but I guess the point I'm making here is President Obama did enact that resolution or that way with the Ledbetter executive order. Then why on earth doesn't he follow it? That's what I'm just saying. I'm saying, you know what, that's great. Enact that, because that's the right thing to do. But don't do as I say, do as I do. That's what we have to do as leaders. We have to say, I'm going to do it, follow me. We're not going to just say it as some type of order and then not do it. That is the wrong thing. And that's why I believe the First Amendment should be the one that we send. It is telling him that we expect our leaders to ask us to do as I do.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. You know, we get pretty partisan down here pretty quickly, don't we? But I think the point of what's all being said down here is that inclusion is really the hallmark. Most of us strive down here to be pretty inclusive when we do our work. And I think most of us find that when we are inclusive, we do our very best work. So I would say this substitute amendment is the inclusive one, Yes, all of our federal officials need to be brought into this. It's inclusive, and I ask you to vote for the substitute amendment.
Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Duran, your amendment misses the point. We know that from published reports, we know that the White House does not afford equal pay. We know that Udall, Senator Udall, does not afford equal pay. From those same published reports, we know that Congressman Kaufman pays women more, and Congressman Cory Gardner pays women more. Now, I'm sure that there are reasons that go into all of those different decisions. But if the White House, under President Obama, is not paying women on par with men, and if Senator Udall is not paying women on par with men, the message ought to be sent to them. The message should be sent to them. We all believe in equal pay for equal work, a fair wage for a fair day's work. But when you have a resolution like this, and you have the Colorado senior senator who is not paying women as he pays men, that's not political, Representative Peniston. That's a fact. That is a fact. And when you have the White House that spends an entire campaign cycle with a war on women talking point, that's political.
Representative McNulty.
The fact that
Representative McNulty, please keep it to the amendment on the underline. This amendment is to send it to all federal officials, so can we talk about this amendment instead of talking about the other amendment that...
The fact that the White House, President Obama, does not pay women on par with men is a fact. That is not political. So if we had a resolution that was before us that talked about fair day's wages for a fair day's work, equal pay for equal work, that's the scenario that Representative Duran might have been alluding to in her arguments for this amendment. This amendment misses the point. And should you adopt this amendment, the House majority would have effectively scrubbed the light that rightfully should be shined on
Representative McNulty,
on Senator Udall and the White House.
Representative McNulty, to the amendment, do not describe motives of anyone.
If this amendment is adopted, the underlying amendment goes away, scrubbing the light that ought to be shined on Colorado senior senator and the leader of the free world, President Obama. The adoption of this amendment is politics. Politics to protect
Representative McNulty.
Politics to protect members
McNulty.
of your party.
Okay. We're done. He's Further discussion on the amendment? Any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, is there objection to taking a voice vote? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? No. The amendment is adopted. We are back to the resolution. Representative Navarro. Sorry, hold on one sec, Representative Navarro. Thank you, Representative Navarro.
Members, I stand before you as a proud Hispanic conservative woman. I have worked for everything I have and that I give to my children. I am here to set an example for my children. Independence, work ethic, and doing it yourself is a message that I have for you. We don't get here on our own. We get here with our own work, our own pride, and I'm just very proud that we all in this room have equal pay. And a resolution like this is very demeaning to me. I'm very proud of who I am and where I come from, and I did it on my own. I put myself through college. My husband and I both worked full-time jobs. We both put ourselves through college, and we're still paying for that. That's how you accomplish your goals. You cannot depend on our government to do that for you. Thank you.
Representative Stevens.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. I heard a very interesting interview with Pharrell Williams and Oprah last night. I thought it was fantastic. Pharrell Williams, for those who don't know, is a big music producer, but his latest song, I think the song Happy, is gone worldwide, and it's a great song. But I like him. He's a very thoughtful old soul. And he had a lot of interesting things to say. But one of the things he had to say, which really caught me, was his latest album that he did, and he titled it Girl. And he was accused of actually not having enough African American women on the cover, except that his former girlfriend, who is African American, was on the cover. And he got into this whole issue of why do we do this? Why are we pick out, how black, how white, how this, how that. He said, this is about equality for women. And he said, women rule the world. And if women for one day didn't show up at work and didn't come home at night, the entire nation would just go to hell in a handbasket. And I agree with him. I agree with him. Women do incredible amounts of work. And they do hold this nation together. And they are the forebearers. But I also agree with my friend, Representative Navarro, that women now more than ever are owning small businesses. They're making incredible amounts of money. Yes, we still have a glass ceiling. Yes, we still have challenges before us. And some of those challenges arise within ourselves versus the environment. I appreciate the issue brought up during our last amendment that I wish we, in some ways, could have spoken a bit longer on, but of this issue of, one office does this based on experience and your talents and your overall experience, and that's how we pay. Well, isn't that how it's done everywhere? I mean, isn't that how it's done in private companies? You look at one's experience, you look at what they bring to the table, and you look at your salaries accordingly versus the government having to tell you how it's all going to be. Listen, I'm not looking to the government to sit here and make way for me. I'm not. And no woman I know, at least on my side of the aisle, they're not waiting around. They're not waiting around. This is a political issue. This is a political issue because you see women with their signs in front of the White House. This is political. You do see people gathering about this issue. But at the end of the day, we make opportunity for ourselves. We get out there. We have the creative ideas. Most of the futurists say that the jobs that are coming in the next 10 to 20 years are all going to be creative right brain jobs. There are going to be a lot of creative right brain jobs. There's going to be opportunities to move ahead and get further. And those are the opportunities I'm excited about, because I see women being able to flow and to move and to excel in so many different ways. So members, I appreciate the spirit of this amendment. I mean of this resolution. I appreciate it. My friend Rep. Peniston, I said, look, these groups that you got listed here, I'm queasy about that. I don't think that's a necessity, but I'll tell you this, is that women are making their way. Women are going higher, farther, longer, faster. They're doing it, and they're doing it not based on what their government gives them and how their government stands in the way. They're doing it because they are bright, creative, amazing, excelling women. And it's for that reason and that reason alone that I'm up here to speak, because I see it year after year after year with the women I meet. And so if you want to include more groups, include every women's business group, include women's small chambers, include women who are getting the job done throughout this state and throughout the nation. Thank you.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Equal Pay Day in this resolution. This resolution is just about bringing awareness. People don't realize that no matter how you analyze the data, you can take into consideration someone's education, someone's experience, or the kind of work, and there's still a gender gap in the way we pay people. 2/3 of workers earning minimum wage are women. Yet more and more women are graduating from college. More women graduate from college today than men graduate. When women do well, our economy and our families do well. And we all need to raise awareness of just the systemic and prolonged gap there is between equal pay for men and women. Just this morning on the radio on NPR, there was a report of study of someone who sent out to every the 250 top colleges and to the top professors there and said, I would like to have you as a mentor. I admire your work. And the only thing that changed in those letters was the name of the person, whether it was male or female, and whether it had what kind of last name it had. And there was a 25% difference between the white men that got responded to and everyone else. And these were top professors, people that were very aware of the issue, and it's just an ongoing bias that we need to raise awareness about. So I rise in support.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsors, for bringing out this particular issue, because it's important to all of us. But at the same time, I object when I'm referred to as a people of color. We all are people of color in one way or the other. I find this term very divisive, very derogatory, and somewhat offensive. We should respect each other as a person for what we are, and not by the color of our skin. And we have heard many leaders refer to this as many, many times in their speeches. Because of that, I feel that above all, we all are Americans. We are Americans. We are not people of color. And I therefore move Amendment L012 and ask to be displayed. Thank you.
To the amendment, Representative Joshi.
As you can see, this basically puts us as Americans, and that's what we are. We should not fight about our color or gender. We all should get paid what we do. We all should get paid equal for equal work. If that is the case, it should be true for all Americans, regardless of their color, gender, where we come from, whatever. So I ask for your support on this amendment.
The discussion on the amendment. Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just simply ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Okay. Seeing no for Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sorry, I have to come down here and ask for a no vote on this amendment. It is important that we do shed a spotlight on the inequities that are happening across this country. The fact that women of color, African American women, are making 67 cents on the dollar. That Latino women are making 52 cents on the dollar. I was raised by a single mom who worked 3 jobs in order to make sure that she provided for our household. And she didn't have the best education growing up. She didn't have access to all the privileges that more affluent families had. And to sit here and say, well, let's just turn a blind eye to all of that, it really does disgust me that this amendment is here. So I ask for a no vote. We need to make sure that we're addressing this and talking about it and trying to move towards equality. I ask for a no vote.
Is there any for Representative Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I think this is a very reasonable amendment. I think Representative Yoshi has a very good point that we are Americans. And as Americans, we agree, we are concerned about this issue. I think this is extremely reasonable. And actually, Rep. Yoshi, I appreciate this because, you know, you've been here, your background and everything that you bring to the table is right, and you really seriously, I think you're dead on about this. And so, members, I don't see the problem with adopting this. As Americans, we're all Americans here, without regard to our race, creed, color. So I would encourage a yes vote on this amendment, and thank you, Rep. Yoshi.
Madam Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as a Latino Colorado woman, I think this is great. If we're going to be inclusive on who gets paid what, let's pay all Coloradoans doing the same job the same pay. That's what this is about. Pay, equal pay. And our leaders being the example of equal pay.
Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Members, I urge a no vote on this amendment to strike women and people of color. If you look at what the resolution is about, it's about equal pay as it relates to women. It's about gender, and it's about color. And so to take that out of the picture and just say it's all about just being Americans, we're ignoring the fact that there is discrimination as it relates to women's pay based on their gender. And so we need to be mindful of that. So I just think that we just need to be very, very clear that what we're talking about here is that there should not be a gender wage gap in America, period. And if you take out women and you take out color, then it's almost like you're erasing that there's not a problem with paycheck equity. And there is. So I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you know, I've got another issue with this amendment that I'll talk about in a minute, but I would direct you to page 2 of the resolution, line 9 and 10, whereas men of color also face pay disparity compared to the highest earners. And so to say that this amendment, and if you look at the title of the amendment, concerning the designation of April 8th, 2014 as Equal Pay Day in Colorado, and in connection therewith acknowledging the persisting problem of wage disparity among various groups, Representative Joshi has a point. I mean, I think what he's trying to do is put the end of the resolution more in context with the whole of the resolution and with the title of the resolution. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, we are not trying to ignore anybody here because, again, as I said, we all are Americans. Whether you are a woman or whether you are a person of color or whatever is your background, once we are here and we are naturalized citizen or born citizen, we are all citizens of this country and we are all Americans. So we are not ignoring. Actually, this amendment does even more than what the resolution does. This amendment includes all the groups which were left out by the resolution. I think we should include everybody. And that's why I asked for your yes vote on this amendment.
Representative Lebsack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Joshi, the reason why I'm going to vote no on this amendment is, you're right, we all are all Americans, but what we're talking about here is a pay gap and an inequity when it comes to folks of color and women. That's what this is about, equal pay. That's the reason why we should vote no to your amendment. We are all Americans. But the people who have inequity, the people who have the pay gap difference are women and people of color. That's the reason why this amendment doesn't make sense, and we need to vote no.
Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, is there objection taking a voice vote? There is objection taking a voice vote. The question for the House is the passage of Amendment L12 to Senate Joint Resolution 26. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. And sergeants, find any of the members who happen to have left the chamber during this great debate. Representatives Buckner, Del Grosso, Dorr, and McNulty. We're voting on Representative Joshi's amendment. Okay. Close the machine. With 28 aye votes, 37 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the amendment L12 is lost. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask that we invoke Rule 16B. Shall the main question be now put?
So you moved, are you, Representative Scott, just to be clarified, are you moving to put the question before the House?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I am.
Hold on, Representative Scott, that is actually this is a little unusual, but this is a non-debatable motion, so there is no conversation on this. The question, this, I think, is the first time this has happened since I've been here, but for everyone's edification, this is to put the question. So first we have to vote on Representative Scott's motion, and then if Representative Scott's motion passes, then the question is put before the House, and we vote on the resolution with no further debate. So basically what Representative Scott's motion would do is end debate on the resolution and get us to the question of voting on the resolution. It's a non-debatable motion, so we do have to vote on it. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives Giroux, Mays, Sane, and Humphrey. Representative May. No, I saw her. Close the machine. With 42 aye votes, 23 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the motion is adopted. Thus, the question is put before the House. I know there's objection to the resolution. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representative Swan. Close the machine. With 54 aye votes, 11 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, Senate Joint Resolution 26 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. We will move to our next order of business, consideration of Senate amendments to House bills. Starting with the first one, Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1017.
House Bill 1017 by Representative Duran, also starring Ulibarri, concerning measures to expand the availability of affordable housing in the state in connection with making modifications to statutory provisions establishing the Housing Investment Trust Fund, the Housing Development Grant Fund, and the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House concur with the Senate amendments on House Bill 1017.
Please explain what the Senate did, Representative Duran.
Members, you may remember this bill. This is a bill to make sure that we build more affordable housing in the state of Colorado. They changed the time in which the tax credit would be available from 4 to 6 years to make it more marketable. I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is concurrent Senate amendments to House Bill 1017. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representative Nordberg. Ed Priola. Close the machine. With 39 aye votes, 26 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1017. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption, repassage of House Bill 1017 as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the repassage of House Bill 1017 as amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representative Szabo. Close the machine. With 37 aye votes, 28 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House repasses House Bill 1017 as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1290.
House Bill 1290 by Representative Becker, also Senator Roberts, concerning addition to the definition of other outlet to enable the operation of a remotely located telepharmacy outlet.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House Bill 1290.
Please explain what the useless body did.
This bill allows remote outlets for pharmacies to be opened in rural areas, and they just clarified that the technical means that the remote outlet can communicate with the main pharmacy are all technologies, not just video.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1290. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buck, Buckner. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1290. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for repassage of House Bill 1290 as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House, the repassage of House Bill 1290 is amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives Del Grosso, Pabon, and Mitch Bush. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1290 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1345.
House Bill 1345 by Representative Giroux, also Senator Lambert, concerning authority for the Department of Higher Education to transfer monies allocated to the Governing Board of Institutions of Higher Education between the Governing Board's appropriation for its fee-for-service contracts and the Governing Board's spending authority for college opportunity stipends as a result of increases or decreases in student enrollment of the Institution of Higher Education.
Very well done, Mr. Kohler. Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House concur with Senate amendments on House Bill 1345.
Please explain what they did, Representative
Thank
Guerrero.
you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, members, the Senate didn't really do anything. They were simply the vessel for the good work of the Joint Budget Committee staff when they found technical amendments that needed to be made to the bill. So you can vote for this concurrence knowing that the Senate actually did nothing, as they always do. I ask for an aye vote.
Very well put, Representative Giroux. I hope we get a unanimous vote on this. Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is to concur in Senate useless amendments to House Bill 1345. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representative Pabon. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. The House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1345. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for repassage of House Bill 1345 as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the repassage of House Bill 1345 as amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives, close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House repasses House Bill 1345 as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1006.
House Bill 1006 by Representative Singer, also Senator Lumberg, concerning the remittance of the marketing and promotion tax collected by lodging establishments in a local marketing district and in connection therewith making and reducing appropriations.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move that the House concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1006.
Seeing no sorry, please explain what the Senate did.
Actually, I'd rather not have discussion, Mr. Speaker, but, well...
I'd like to know.
Yeah, we should let folks know. You know, I like to throw the Senate a bone every now and then, and, you know, we took a good floor amendment on this bill to make sure that small businesses that don't remit their taxes on a monthly basis, but do so on a quarterly basis or a longer-term basis, are not negatively affected by this. And it really wasn't the Senate, but our excellent drafter, Nicole Myers, who made sure that the language was more efficient, elegant, and effective. And, well, while I don't like to give the Senate any sense of accomplishment, this is really for the business owners up in Estes Park, and so I encourage an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1006. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1006. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the repassage of House Bill 1006 on third as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the repassage of House Bill 1006 on third as amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives, close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1006 is repassed as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1042.
House Bill 1042 by Representative Sane, also Senator Talktrop, concerning access by birth parents to records relating to relinquishment of parental rights in connection with making an appropriation.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do move that we concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill 1042.
Please explain what the Senate did, Representative Sane.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the body that shall not be named did play a little bit of grammarian and added 4 words that clarified the object of a sentence, as well as added the words healthcare provider.
Sounds like useless amendments, but I guess we'll concur with them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
No further discussion. The question before the House is the concurrent Senate amendments to House Bill 1042. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1042. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the repassage of House Bill 1042 as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the repassage of House Bill 1042 as amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives Gardner, May, Priola, and Peniston. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House repasses House Bill 1042 as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Colo, please read the title of the House Bill 1045.
House Bill 1045, Representative Primavera, also Senators Aguilar and Crowder, concerning the continuation of the breast and cervical cancer prevention and treatment program in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hate to continue this streak of concurring with the Senate, but I move to concur with Senate amendment to House Bill 1045.
Please explain what the Senate did.
Well, all of us want to hear these three little words, but it's not the three little words we think. It's not I love you. It's and reducing appropriation. We need less general fund because we're using the revenue from the license plates, so they added and reducing appropriation, so I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1045. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 64 aye votes, 1 no vote, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House concurs in Senate amendments to House Bill 1045. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the repassage of House Bill 1045 as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1045, the repassage of House Bill 1045 is amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives Conti and Gardner. Close the machine. With 49 aye votes, 16 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House repasses House Bill 1045 as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1207.
House Bill 1207, Representative Young, also Senators Aguilar and Newell, concerning the creation of a household medication take-back program in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1207.
Please explain what the Senate did, Representative Young.
Changed a little bit in the title of the bill and made a technical change to the appropriations back on page 5 and 4.
Seeing no further discussion, the question for the House is to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1207. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Representatives Tyler and Young. Close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House concurs in Senate amendment to House Bill 1207. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for repassage of House Bill 1207 as amended.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House, the repassage of House Bill 1207 is amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine, and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 50 aye votes, 15 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, the House repasses House Bill 1207 as amended. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Announcements and introductions. Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Local Government Committee. Just wanted to remind folks that breakfast tomorrow at 7:30 at Racine's. Great work this year. I'm sure we'll have a few more bills to look at, but let's celebrate what we've done. Please reach out to me if you can or cannot make it. And otherwise, we look forward to seeing you 7:30 at Racine's Local Government.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Business, Labor, Economic Workforce Development Committee, we meet today at 1:30. We will hear House Bill 1383 and House Bill 1377. We'll see you at 1:30. We will begin promptly. Thank you.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask to be
excused tomorrow at 11:30 for the rest of the day. I've cleared it with minority and majority leaders.
Representative Dorr will be excused as requested. Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow, the Appropriations Committee is scheduled to meet at 7:30. I'm going to go ahead and change that time till 8 a.m. So enjoy that extra 30 minutes. There's also some additional bills that will be heard tomorrow that are not on the calendar. Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 150, House Bill 1384, Senate Bill 189, and House Bill 1377.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of Health Insurance and Environment Committee will meet downstairs about 10 minutes to 11, so in about 15 minutes. Thanks.
Representative Gardner.
All right, members, listen up. Now that I have everyone's attention, tomorrow, April 23rd, is Wear Jeans on April 23rd in Colorado, all across Colorado, in support of Colorado Denim Day, which is a worldwide event to support the Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We will be allowed to wear jeans. So this is a great tradition that we're starting. The catch is this. If you wear jeans, we'll ask you for a $5 donation. If you don't wear jeans, we'll ask you for 10. That's right. You count on JBC to know exactly how this works. We'll count on 10. So this directly supports CCASA's advocacy work for survivors' support, perpetrators' accountability, and bringing sexual violence to an end in Colorado's communities.
Madam Majority Leader.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Gardner, for announcing this important day in Colorado. And I, as the Majority Leader, I'm here to explain to you the limits of the jeans wearing that we have in order to honor both end of sexual assault and the decorum in the state legislature. If you wear jeans, please wear your jackets, shirts, and ties, and women, that would be jackets or appropriate blouse of some sort. Or if you want to wear a denim jacket that's a dress jacket or a denim suit, that's probably fine, but please keep it in the range of decorum for the House of Representatives. Thank you.
Representative Gardner.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. And the important point about all of this is that we would like to raise money for CCASA and emphasize and create awareness around sexual violence and what we can do about it in Colorado. Thank you.
Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not having a pair of jeans, I don't want to go out and buy them, but I do have a blue jean jacket. If I wear the blue jean jacket, is that okay? Hooey.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if I could have your attention, members, in light of what transpired this morning, I think this announcement has some more importance. I'm presenting a tribute to the Colorado Mediation Association in conjunction with Dispute Resolution, Conflict Resolution Month, which is the month of October this year. We have 4 representatives from the Mediation Association with us this morning who I'd like to recognize: Mary Zinn, Mike Madej, Steve Felt, and Rita Highland. If we could just show our appreciation for the good work they do.
And Representative Lee, that'll be $4. $4. Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One last announcement for the Joint Budget Committee. It just conferred with the Senate, and we will resume at 2:30 p.m.
Further, Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Representative Sane will be granted a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, a lot of us agree that all Americans should have equal pay, and in this chamber we do have equal pay, but we should also have equal say, regardless of what party affiliation we are. And so I will have my say because I believe that I had a very important contribution to the resolution that was up earlier. And what I wanted to say to that was the fact that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, by the way, does admit that women make 81% of what men make on a full-time job. But what was left out is that men work an average of 8.14 hours a day and women work 7.75 hours a day. And why is that? Because some women, some of us, will work less to do things that we deem more important. That we deem more important. And I wanted to let you know what the average director of operations position, you know, this is a very demanding job that we don't have as many women in the workforce doing as a director of operations. But let me read this ad to you. This ad that was sent out across the internet, having a mandatory 135 hours a week of work, required a job holder be on call at all times, day or night, qualified candidate should have a knowledge of psychology, medicine, personal finance, culinary arts, and basic technology skills. It also had physical requirements. You had to stand all the time, lift up to 75 pounds, constantly be moving. There was only 24 people that responded to the ad because I had no paid holidays. And in the end, when they were interviewed for the job, they were ultimately told they weren't paid at all. And they asked who would do such work. Who would work 135 hours a week? And the answer was your mother.
Representative Sane, and I appreciate your moment of personal privilege. Just to clarify, and I just because it's under the rules, and I wanted to know the rules before I said anything. Just two things were actually. One, customary is if you're going to ask for a moment of personal privilege, you request it privately from the speaker first. Second, the rules on personal privilege. Any member, as a matter of personal privilege, speak for a period not longer than 5 minutes upon such matters as may collectively reflect the House, its rights, its dignity, the integrity of its proceedings, or its rights, reputation, and conduct of its individual members in their respective capacities only. B, in no event shall any member be permitted to utilize personal privilege to debate any motion, bill, resolution, memorial, other business pending before the House. So that is...
Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker?
I think how you started fits within A. I think the specifics of a policy do not fit within A.
Mr. Speaker, the reason why I'm speaking is I was denied this chance to provide this opportunity. It was for an amendment recognizing stay-at-home moms and what they do for us, and that sometimes we're more than just a dollar. As Americans, we have pushed up the glass ceiling, Mr. Speaker, as Americans and as American women. And some of us choose not to live behind that glass or in front of that glass. Sometimes we choose to go our own way. And sometimes that own way is raising our children and staying at home. And that is worth more. That is worth more sometimes. And the average woman, stay-at-home mom, actually should make $113,000 a year if you were to put a monetary value on that. So what's important to note here, Mr. Speaker, is I should have got a chance to offer this amendment that I think both parties may have agreed upon to honor all women if this resolution was about women and equal pay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further announcements or introductions or moments of personal privilege, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon, at which point we will adjourn until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Members, also sorry, I should have announced earlier, likely we'll be back on the floor Thursday afternoon after committee, so just be prepared for that. I want to give you fair warning. The House will stand, seeing no objection, the House will stand in recess till 1 p.m. today.